Hey, this is Ben Solomon, and welcome to this episode of the Techno Leadership Show. In this episode, we are going to be talking about what would a day in the life of a senior technology or engineering professional look like. And this is coming more from my background, having worked in IT. Yes, I've got a bachelor's degree in engineering, electronics, and then went into networks and systems and went down that path of being an infrastructure engineer and infrastructure architect designer. I've done that as part of my roles, and then went into IT management and IT executive leadership as director of ICT, and now documenting all these things here. So from that perspective, I've seen my own journey, but I've also seen the journeys of others in senior level technology and engineering roles. And so based on that, this is some of the things that normally happen in a senior level person's role. So like start of the day, as with any other person in a IT engineering sort of background, there are things that we've got to check. There are responsibilities that we have. If you're an infrastructure engineer, the infrastructure is under your care. It might include authentication, it might include wireless networks, it might include networking services and systems, all of that. And if you're on a big team, you might have other people in your team who are responsible for subsections of it. One person might be responsible for virtual servers, another person might be responsible for wireless, another person might be even responsible for authentication. And if you're in such a situation, fantastic. You have people who can act on subsections of the holistic plan to ensure that they're all working in order, and they can then report to you, and you, being the escalation support them in resolution, but also the communication conduit who then communicates with the management, like technical manager or operations manager or CIO, CTO, whatever it might be, depending on your hierarchy, and they then do the comms with the whole business. So start of the day, you have those checks. You go through usually a checklist of things to make sure that everything that is important for the business is operational and is working as it's meant to work, and the performance is as it's expected to be. Then the other next stage of things is looking at escalation jobs. If you have a help desk system of sorts or support services that sit in front of you, you might have to support them with some of the escalation jobs that come up. Some are complicated technical issues that they are not able to resolve, some things that need your expertise and your input and your authentication. Like in an organization that has multiple layers, usually the lower level staff don't have enough authority in the systems as administrator access, domain administrator, enterprise administrator access to be able to get in and do the kind of troubleshooting that needs to be done to resolve some major issues. So those things come up to you, you look into that, and based on priority, you prioritize them and work through them as much as possible. If it's something that's affecting major services of the business, then obviously you'll have to communicate up to your level up to you, so technical manager, operations manager, and then that goes out to the right channels. And in most cases, you also have some form of a meeting. In some environments, it's informal, where you might just cluster together 5 or 6 of you and quickly have a chat about what's going on right now, what's highest priority, and what jobs are on your plate for the day, sort of thing, and go on. In places that I've been a manager and executive leader, I've tried to have stand-up meetings where 5 minutes we all get together, the whole department, so I get a gauge from top to bottom exactly what's going on in technical services, which means if I'm asked a question, I can answer that to the rest of the executive leadership and management. And if there's anything that I need to communicate, I can proactively say these are services that are out of order at the moment, and this is the expected fixed time and all that sort of thing. So stand-up meetings are great for getting a good feel to touch base on where things are at, or any issues that need your attention. And if you're in an organization where you have a management layer and then you have executive leadership and you have multiple teams, technical teams in there, it might be best to have the technical teams that are below you to, or technical leaders below you, to talk to you. Have a meeting before you have your stand up with your management layer if there's multiple sub departments. But if it's not that big a team, let's say if you're an organization that has a technical department that's made of under 10 people, maybe even under 15 people in some cases, you might be able to just get together in a circle like a huddle, have a quick session where everyone touches base quickly, say, look, I've got these issues sitting on my table, I might need your help. So the junior engineer might say, look, I need your help, senior engineer, for Azure services to help me fix this authentication issue that I'm working on. So that happens quickly, and then you schedule time with people after the meeting, and if there's any in-depth detail that you need to go in, it happens after the stand-up. The stand-up's just saying, look, this is what's on my plate, this is the trouble I'm having, and that's it. And then you just move on with your whole team. So that's basically the stand-up side of things, or huddle meeting, whatever you want to call it. For senior engineers, you have a lot of project planning and implementation. There's usually multiple projects going on side by side, which means some are in planning stages, some are in analysis stages, some are in implementation stages, and some are in after post-implementation work stages. So you'll have to work on your schedule and schedule parts of it based on your priority, based on deadlines, all of that. And then there's doing business cases. Most of the times, yes, it's usually the manager of the sub-department or a department that does most of the work for business cases, but they do depend on senior engineers to give them information on why certain platforms or certain hardware or whatever it might be is being requested. So that comes from you as the senior engineer to compile the data, compile forecasting information, everything, and put it together so that the manager can then finish off the business case and have it pushed up to executive management for funding and all that sort of thing. Then there is business analysis work, which means going up to various stakeholders, sitting with them, finding out what issues they've got, so that you can then bring back project ideas to go into like a continuous implementation, continuous development style environment, where you might have a platform that you're trying to implement for, let's say, new staff starting in the business. So rather than doing a full implementation completely from start, you might have done an initial test phase, and then when you do the basic implementation, you might just have one level of the project implemented and ensure that that's working well before you can then go in and implement another feature or another service to it. So that's basically what happens. So which means you go back, you get information, you in essence create either a new project or a sub project, and then work with that to ensure you're continuously improving the platforms that you have and systems that you have, and ensure that the business gets all the support and the benefits that they can get out of having a technology department on site. Then forecasting is another thing. Again, as I said, for business case prep as well as for budget prep and all that, forecasting is required, and senior engineers and architects who are responsible for certain aspects of the technology stack usually are asked to give the leaders and managers information on what's required and what's forecasted as part of capacity planning, so that they can then put in funding requests or budget plans, project plans, workload management. All of that then happens from the manager's side. And then long-term planning from a core technical aspect, you're the one who will have the responsibility to ensure that you do long-term planning on what roadmap needs to be followed to ensure that the business is current with technology, with tools and all of that aspects of things. Then migration strategy would be another part of it. So if you're moving towards newer platforms or looking at modernizing infrastructure, etc., again, the whole strategy, migration, technical migration of it will come from technical architects and senior technical engineers who then put in a plan together so that the manager can then add it to part of business cases and get it actioned and funded and implemented. Governance is another important part of what you do as a senior engineer. There are corporate governance frameworks that each company has, things that need to be ensured that work according to those governance frameworks. Then there are frameworks that come from government departments, from other organizations that are required to be followed. So based on what your organization's taken up as a standard to follow, there's certain frameworks, and then there's probably for IT and IT services and engineering services, you might have picked up another framework like ITIL or COBIT or whatever it might be. So you've got to make sure that whatever processes, projects that you have follow those governance frameworks. And then there is security and other aspects of things that you need to look into. So if you have certain frameworks for security, testing them, making sure that they're all working and everything aligns with those frameworks to ensure that data and information is secure and your environment as such is secure or your designs are secure. All of those things are part of a senior engineer and senior architect's role. And there is some level of contract management and vendor management when you're working with external vendors to ensure that their software, their hardware, their systems comply with your governance frameworks and your design and architecture. So all of these things come in on a day-to-day basis. You'll have parts, touch between all these things, or there are days when you can focus on one thing and one thing only. If you're lucky enough to be in an environment where you can focus on one thing and one thing only, fantastic. But in most environments that I've worked in, there's been a mix of all these things that come in together, but that keeps the job exciting, interesting, and growth oriented. So you're constantly growing, you're constantly learning, constantly doing things to improve your knowledge and wisdom around these systems and managing everything as well. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of a walk through a day in the life of a senior technology or engineer professional, and I hope you find that interesting. And if that is something of interest and you're looking to go into that sort of role, I wish you all the best, and hopefully some of the episodes that I've done around strengths and weaknesses and preparing yourself for such role growth might be beneficial for you to go through and have a look as well. And if you haven't yet subscribed, please do hit the subscribe button, and I promise to keep you informed and entertained with good quality content that you can utilize to grow in your technology and engineering career. So I wish you all the best. Have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the future episode. Cheers, bye.